This presentation explores religious and mythological beliefs about the afterlife. The content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes and is not a reflection of personal or theological endorsement. Viewer discretion is advised. What if the most powerful ruler in the universe isn't a god of the sky, but a god of the grave? A king whose subjects number in the trillions, whose kingdom expands with every passing second. For millennia, humanity has stared into the void and imagined who stares back. And in that darkness, three colossal figures emerged. One was a forgotten king, cast down to rule a gloomy, thankless empire of shadows. Another was a righteous pharaoh, betrayed, murdered, and dismembered by his own brother, only to be reborn as the eternal judge of all souls. The third was a goddess, born half-living, half-dead, banished by her own father to a frozen wasteland to preside over the dishonored and the damned. They are Hades, Osiris, and Hell. Three gods, three underworlds, three different fates awaiting every one of us. We think we know them. We see their names in movies and video games, reduced to simple villains and cartoon monsters. But the truth is infinitely more complex and far more terrifying. These aren't just stories. They are the blueprints of our deepest fears and our most desperate hopes about what comes next. So we are going to put them on trial. We will journey into the heart of their domains, from the fiery pits of Tartarus to the golden fields of Aru, to the frozen shores of Nastrand. We will judge them on their power, their laws, their mercy, and their cruelty. And by the end of this journey, we will answer a question that has haunted empires and whispered in the minds of every person who has ever lived. Who is the true, undisputed sovereign of the dead? The answer will not be what you expect. Because one of these gods isn't just a warden of souls, they are a vision of our own future. To begin our trial, we must first travel to ancient Greece, to a kingdom you think you know. Forget the fire, forget the pitchforks, forget the cackling red devil. The true lord of the Greek underworld is not a monster. He is an administrator, a bureaucrat of the damned. His name is Hades, and his story is one of cosmic tragedy. He was one of the 6 original Olympian gods, a son of the Titan Kronos. He fought alongside his brothers Zeus and Poseidon in the decade-long war that shook the foundations of creation, the Titanomachy. When the dust settled and the Titans were overthrown, the 3 brothers stood as masters of the universe. To divide their new empire, they cast lots. Zeus, the youngest, drew the heavens. Poseidon drew the seas. And Hades, he drew the short straw. He was given the underworld, the dark, sunless, subterranean realm where the souls of all mortals were destined to go. It was not a reward, it was a banishment. While his brothers feasted on Mount Olympus, drenched in sunlight and glory, Hades was exiled to the gloom, tasked with the eternal, thankless job of managing the dead. This is the first and most critical thing to understand about him. Hades is not evil. He is not the Greek equivalent of Satan. In all of ancient Greek mythology, he is one of the most just and impartial gods. He is not a tempter of mortals, nor does he seek to collect souls before their time. His entire existence is dedicated to a single unyielding principle: order. The natural order is that the living stay in the world of light, and the dead stay in his world of shadow. His greatest anger is reserved for those who try to cheat death or escape his realm. He is a warden, not a torturer. His kingdom isn't a hell in the Christian sense. It is simply the place you go. And what a place it was! To reach it, a newly deceased soul would be led by the messenger god, Hermes, to the banks of a great dark river. This was the river Styx, the boundary between life and death, so sacred that even the gods swore their most unbreakable oaths upon its name. Here, the soul would meet a grim, skeletal ferryman named Charon. But passage was not free. Charon demanded payment, a single coin, an obelisk, which the ancient Greeks would place in the mouth of their dead before burial. Without the coin, a soul was doomed to wander the banks for 100 years as a lost specter. Once across, they would face the first and most famous guardian of the underworld, Cerberus. Not a demon, but a monstrous 3-headed dog, with a serpent for a tail and snakes writhing from his back. Cerberus's job was not to keep souls out, but to keep them in. He was said to be ferocious to those who tried to escape, but would often greet newcomers with a friendly, wagging tail. Past this terrifying gatekeeper, the soul would enter the true heart of Hades's kingdom and face a panel of 3 judges, former mortal kings renowned for their wisdom. They would review the soul's life and pass sentence, sending them to one of 3 final destinations: Most people, the vast majority of humanity who were neither exceptionally good nor exceptionally evil, were sent to the Asphodel Meadows. This was not a place of punishment, but of profound eternal melancholy. It was a vast gray ghostly plain of strange pale flowers. Here the souls of average people wandered forever as listless, witless shades, like sleepwalkers in a dream, with no memory of their former lives. No joy, no sorrow, just nothing. It was an eternity of utter boredom. For the wicked, the murderers, the oath-breakers, the truly evil, there was Tartarus. This was the deepest, darkest abyss of the underworld, a pit of torment and divine punishment. This is where the vanquished titans were imprisoned, and where mortals who committed unforgivable sins against the gods were sent to suffer eternal, inventive tortures. King Tantalus, who tried to trick the gods, was cursed to stand in a pool of water he could never drink, beneath a fruit tree he could never reach, tormented by perpetual hunger and thirst. Sisyphus was forced to roll a massive boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down each time he neared the top, for all eternity. This was the true hell of the Greek world, reserved for the very worst. But there was also hope. For the heroes, the righteous, the truly virtuous, there was Elysium, or the Elysian Fields. This was a paradise, a land of eternal sunshine, music, and peace, where the greatest souls could live on in blissful rest, free from all pain and toil. It was the ultimate reward, a testament to the fact that Hades' kingdom, while grim, was fundamentally just. Your actions in life had a direct, unchangeable consequence in death. Hades ruled this complex society from a dark throne of ebony, beside his equally powerful and enigmatic queen Persephone. Their story is one of the most famous in all of mythology, the tale of her abduction and the subsequent creation of the seasons. But she was no mere prisoner. Persephone grew to be a formidable queen of the underworld in her own right, often depicted as more stern and terrifying than Hades himself. He was a king of immense wealth, whose other name, Pluto, means the rich one. All the precious metals and gems hidden in the earth belonged to him. Yet, despite his power, his wealth, and his vast kingdom, he was a lonely, isolated figure, feared by mortals and largely avoided by the other gods. He was the great, unmentionable reality, the final destination. His rule was absolute, his laws were unbreakable, and his judgment was inescapable. He offered no salvation, no rebirth, only a cold, efficient, and orderly processing of the dead. His kingdom was a perfect machine of justice. But for all its order and unyielding law, Hades' kingdom was built on a foundation of gloom and inevitability. It was a kingdom of shadows, and another god, half a world away, was offering something entirely different. A promise not of eternal stasis, but of resurrection itself. A king who had died and come back. To understand this new kingdom, we must travel from the rocky shores of Greece to the fertile banks of the Nile, where the sun wasn't a distant god, but the very source of life itself. Here, in the land of the pharaohs, the first king was not a mortal man, but a god named Osiris. He was the son of the earth and the sky, and he brought civilization to humanity. Before him, the people of Egypt were lawless and savage. Osiris, with his queen and sister, the brilliant magician Isis, taught them how to cultivate grain, how to worship the gods, how to live in harmony. He was the perfect king, just, wise, and beloved. His reign was a golden age, a paradise on earth. But paradise always has a serpent. And in this story, the serpent was his own brother, Set. Where Osiris represented the fertile black soil of the Nile Valley, the very essence of life and order, Set was the god of the harsh red desert that surrounded it. He was chaos, violence, and the raging storm. And he was consumed by a jealousy so profound, it curdled into a murderous poison. He watched his brother's perfect kingdom. He saw the love the people had for him, and he decided it should all be his. Set, however, was a cunning god. He wouldn't challenge his brother to open combat. Instead, he devised a trap built on vanity and celebration. He commissioned a magnificent chest, a sarcophagus of unparalleled beauty, crafted from the finest cedar and inlaid with gold and silver. But he had it made with a secret, sinister purpose. Its internal dimensions were measured precisely to fit one person and one person alone. Osiris. Set then threw a lavish banquet, a party for the gods. Wine flowed, music played, and at the height of the festivities, he unveiled his masterpiece. He announced that this incredible chest would be a gift to whoever could fit perfectly inside it. One by one the gods tried. One was too tall, another too broad. They laughed as they failed, completely unaware of the deadly game they were playing. Finally, it was Osiris's turn. He smiled, admiring his brother's handiwork, and lay down inside the chest. It was a perfect fit. In that instant, the mood shattered. Before Osiris could react, Set and his co-conspirators slammed the heavy lid shut, sealing it with lead and hammering it with nails. The sounds of the party were replaced by the frantic, muffled pounding from within the chest. They ignored his cries. They carried the beautiful coffin, now a prison of death, and hurled it into the Nile River. The current carried the god-king away, and Set, the usurper, seized the throne of Egypt. The news of her husband's disappearance devastated Isis. But her grief was not one of quiet sorrow. It was a roaring fire of determination. The greatest magician among the gods, she refused to accept his death. She set out on an impossible quest, searching the length of Egypt, following the path of the river, desperate for any sign of her beloved. Her search led her beyond the borders of Egypt, to the distant Phoenician city of Byblos. There, the chest had washed ashore and a sacred tree had miraculously grown around it, encasing the body of the dead king within its trunk. The local king, unaware of the divine contents, had cut down the magnificent tree and used it as a central pillar in his palace. Isis, in disguise, made her way into the court, and through her wisdom and magic, she revealed her true identity and the nature of the sacred pillar. The king, in awe and fear, gave it to her. She cut away the wood and finally, after so long, she had him back. She brought his body back to Egypt, hiding it in the marshes of the Nile Delta, and used her powerful magic to breathe life back into his lungs. He was alive again, if only for a moment. But Set's spies were everywhere. While hunting in the marshes, he discovered the hidden body. His rage was absolute. This time, he would not make the mistake of leaving Osiris whole. He would not allow for any possibility of resurrection. He took his brother's body and, in a fit of unparalleled brutality, he tore it into 14 pieces, scattering them across the entire land of Egypt. This wasn't just murder. It was an act of cosmic desecration. An unwhole body could never find peace in the afterlife. Set wasn't just trying to kill his brother. He was trying to erase his soul from existence. What followed was one of the most powerful stories of love and devotion in all of mythology. Isis, her heart broken anew, began a second, even more agonizing quest. With her sister Nephthys, she journeyed to every corner of the kingdom, searching for the scattered pieces of her husband. She found a leg in one place, an arm in another. Patiently, painstakingly, she collected 13 of the 14 pieces. The final piece, the phallus, had been thrown into the Nile and eaten by a fish. It was lost forever. Even so, Isis would not be defeated. She fashioned a replacement from gold, and with the help of Anubis, the god of mummification, and Thoth, the god of wisdom, she reassembled her husband's body. She wrapped him in linen bandages, creating the first mummy. Then, transforming herself into a kite, a bird of prey, she hovered over his body, fanning her wings and breathing the spirit of life back into him one last time. It was in this magical, fleeting reunion that she conceived their son Horus, the heir who would one day rise to avenge his father. But Osiris could not remain in the land of the living. His body was incomplete. His ordeal had changed him. He was no longer the king of the vibrant, sunlit world. Instead, he descended into the underworld, the Duat, to become its eternal lord. And here is the crucial difference. Unlike Hades, who simply inherited his kingdom, Osiris earned his. He had lived, he had ruled, he had been murdered, dismembered, and reborn through magic and love. He understood mortality in a way no other god could. His underworld wasn't the gray, aimless shadowland of the Greeks. The Egyptian afterlife was a complex, perilous journey, but it held a promise. The Duat was a place of trial and judgment. When a soul arrived, it had to pass a series of gates guarded by demons before entering the Hall of Two Truths. There, before Osiris himself, the ultimate test took place, the weighing of the heart. The deceased heart was placed on one side of a great scale. On the other was the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. The soul then had to recite the negative confessions, declaring all the evil deeds they had not committed in life. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not been deceitful. If the heart, heavy with sin, outweighed the feather, it was immediately devoured by a terrifying beast named Ammit, a hybrid of a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. This was the true end. To be eaten by the devourer of souls was to cease to exist forever. But if the heart was light and balanced with the feather, Osiris would grant the soul passage into the field of reeds, a perfect, idealized version of Egypt, a paradise of eternal life and abundance. Think about that difference. Hades offers a kingdom of finality, a dusty, democratic end for everyone, hero and coward alike. Osiris offers a choice. He offers a system based on morality. His kingdom is built not on inevitability, but on justice. He is not a warden. He is the ultimate judge, a symbol that death is not just an end, but a transition, a gateway to a potential eternity you have to earn. So we have a realm of shadow and a realm of judgment. One a grim certainty, the other a hopeful possibility. But what if the underworld was neither? What if it wasn't a place for souls to fade away or to be weighed and measured? What if it was simply cold? A realm of ice and mist, where the dead are not judged, but simply forgotten, ruled by a queen born from a monstrous lineage, half living and half dead herself. This queen's name is Hel, and her story begins not with the divine birthright, but with a monstrous prophecy. She is the daughter of Loki, the trickster god of Asgard, and the giantess Angerboda, the bringer of sorrow. Hers is a cursed lineage. Her brothers are the stuff of nightmares. One is Fenrir, the colossal wolf destined to swallow Odin whole during the final battle of Ragnarok. The other is Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, a beast so enormous it encircles the entire world, biting its own tail. The gods of Asgard, the Aesir, heard prophecies of the chaos these three children would unleash, and so, driven by fear, they acted. Odin had the great serpent thrown into the sea. He had the wolf Fenrir bound in magical chains. And for the daughter Hel, he had a special fate. He saw her face, one half that of a beautiful living woman, the other the decaying blackened flesh of a corpse. Seeing this grim duality, he cast her down into the primordial darkness of Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist. He gave her dominion over all who died of sickness or old age, naming her realm Helheim. It was not a gift. It was a banishment, a cosmic quarantine. Unlike Hades, who received his kingdom as a third of the universe by lottery, and unlike Osiris, who ruled the afterlife as a continuation of his just kingship on earth, Hel is a queen in exile. Her power is born from the gods' fear of her. Her kingdom is a prison, both for her and for the souls she governs. And what a kingdom it is! Forget the fiery pits of damnation. Helheim is a landscape of profound, soul-crushing cold. It is a world of damp fog, of shadows that cling to you like a wet shroud, of an endless, silent twilight. To reach it, a soul must travel along an arduous road, down a declining northern slope. They must cross the river Joel, which translates to screaming, a torrent flowing not with water, but with razor-sharp knives. The only way across is the Jallerbru, a bridge paved with glittering gold, guarded by the skeletal giantess Mgr. She demands to know your name and your business before you can pass, ensuring that the living do not trespass and the dead do not escape. Beyond the bridge lie the massive gates of Helgrind, and within, a realm of utter misery and gloom. Hel's hall is called Lujnar, or sleet damp. Her plate is hunger. Her knife is famine. Her servant is sloth, and her bed is sickbed. These aren't just names. They are the very essence of the place. It is an existence defined by what it lacks: warmth, light, joy, honor, and hope. This is the crucial difference. The Greek underworld, for all its gloom, had a kind of order. The virtuous could find their way to the Elysian fields. The wicked were punished in Tartarus. The average soul simply faded in the asphodel meadows. Osiris's Duat was a place of active moral judgment. Your life was weighed on a scale. Your virtue determined your eternity. But in Helheim, your virtue is irrelevant. Your character, your kindness, your cruelty, none of it matters. The only thing that determines your fate is how you died. Did you die a glorious death in battle, axe in hand, a war cry on your lips? Then the Valkyries would carry you to Valhalla to feast and fight alongside Odin until Ragnarok. But if you died any other way, a straw death, as they called it, in your bed from illness, from the slow decay of age, from an accident, then your soul belonged to Hel. The greatest king and the lowliest farmer, if they died of a fever, would share the same cold, bleak eternity. The Norse fear wasn't damnation for their sins. It was the terror of an inglorious, forgotten end, an eternity of being cold. Hel herself is not a figure of active evil. not a devil tempting mortals to sin. She is a warden, a grim, implacable gatekeeper. Her nature is absolute, unbending, as cold and unyielding as the realm she rules. And the most famous story about her proves it. It's the story of Balder, the most beloved of all the gods. He was the son of Odin and Frigg, the god of light, purity, and joy. He was so beautiful and so good that all of creation loved him. But he was plagued by dreams of his own death. His mother, Frigg, in a panic, traveled through the 9 realms and made every single thing, every rock, every tree, every animal, every disease, swear an oath never to harm her son. The gods thought he was now invincible, and they made a game of it, throwing weapons at him, watching them all turn aside. But Frigg, in her haste, had overlooked one small, seemingly harmless thing, the mistletoe. Loki, ever the agent of chaos, discovered this secret. He fashioned a dart from the mistletoe and tricked Balder's blind brother, Hr, into throwing it. The dart pierced Balder and he fell down dead. The joy of Asgard died with him. His soul descended to the cold halls of Helheim. Odin's son, Hermod, rode the great 8-legged horse Sleipnir for 9 nights down the dark road to Hel, begging the queen of the dead to release his brother. He told her of the sorrow that gripped the entire world. And Hel in her grim hall listened. She did not mock him. She did not refuse out of spite. She simply stated the law of her realm, the absolute nature of her power. She would allow Balder to return to the living on one single condition: if every single thing in all of creation, living and dead, would weep for him. And so the messengers went out, and everything wept. The gods wept. Men and women wept. The animals wept. The trees wept, the rocks wept. Even the metals wept tears of sorrow for the fallen god of light. The proof was brought back to Hel. Balder was on the verge of being released, but the messengers found one holdout, an old giantess in a cave who called herself Thok. She refused. "Let Hel hold what she has," she cackled. And with those words the deal was broken. Balder was forced to remain in the cold darkness of Helheim until the end of the world. That giantess, of course, was Loki in disguise. This story reveals everything about Hel. She isn't malicious. She's a force of nature, a law unto herself. Her power is not in torture but in finality. She is the embodiment of an unchangeable, indifferent fate. She doesn't need to punish. The simple, endless reality of her realm is punishment enough. So now we have our 3 rulers, our 3 gods of the underworld, each a reflection of the culture that created them. We have Hades, the unseen, wealthy king of a vast, gray, and mostly indifferent kingdom of shadows, a reflection of the Greek fear of losing one's identity and legacy. We have Osiris, the murdered and resurrected king, the righteous judge of a complex afterlife filled with trials and the promise of paradise, representing the Egyptian obsession with justice, order, and eternal life. And now we have Hel, the monstrous outcast, the half-dead queen of a cold, bleak realm, the final destination for the inglorious, embodying the Norse terror of a meaningless death and being forgotten. A gloomy king, a righteous judge, and a two-faced queen. Their personalities shape their kingdoms, and their kingdoms define the fears of their people. But how does a soul even reach their gates? The journey to the underworld is often more terrifying than the destination itself. For the Greeks, it began with a coin under the tongue and a ride with a skeletal ferryman across a black river. For the Egyptians, it was a perilous voyage through a landscape of fire-breathing serpents and demon-guarded gates. For the Norse, a long dark road to a screaming knife-filled river. The path a soul walks says as much about its final fate as the throne on which its new ruler sits. And at the end of that path, at the foot of that throne, comes the moment of truth, the final accounting, the judgment. For every soul, regardless of the pantheon, this is the most terrifying moment of their existence. All the deeds of a lifetime, every secret whispered, every choice made in darkness or light, are about to be laid bare before a power that cannot be deceived. In the Greek underworld, you don't stand before Hades himself. He is a king, a manager, not a courtroom judge. His is the business of governance, of maintaining the absolute and final order of his realm. Instead, the newly arrived soul, stripped of its mortal flesh, its rank, and its riches, stands naked and trembling before a tribunal of 3. These are not gods. They are men. Or rather, they were men. Kings so renowned for their wisdom and justice in life that they were granted the eternal duty of judging the dead. First is Minos, the former king of Crete, a son of Zeus himself. In life he was the lawgiver. In death, He is the Chief Justice, holding a golden scepter, his word the final say in any disputed case. Beside him sits his brother, Rhadamanthus, the Lord of Elysium. He judges the souls of the East, a stern but fair arbiter who, according to some tales, forces the wicked to confess their every transgression. The third is Aeacus, another son of Zeus and former king of the island Aegina, a man so pious he could command the rain to fall. He is the judge of the souls from the west. Here in this gray, echoing chamber, your life is unspooled like a scroll. There is no hiding. The soul itself bears the scars of its misdeeds and the glow of its virtues. The judges see everything. They are not swayed by rhetoric or pleas for mercy. They weigh your actions against the eternal laws. And from their verdict, three paths diverge. For the vast, overwhelming majority of humanity, those who were neither exceptionally good nor irredeemably evil, the path leads to the asphodel meadows, an eternity of gray, mindless wandering, a place of shadows and echoes where you forget who you were, existing as a flitting, insubstantial shade. It is not punishment, it is oblivion. For the heroic, the righteous, the truly virtuous, the judges point the way to Elysium, the Isles of the Blessed, a paradise of eternal sunlight, song, and peace. But for the wicked, the tyrants, the oathbreakers, the murderers, those who defy the gods, Minos points his scepter toward the deepest, darkest pit of all, Tartarus, a prison of torment so profound that it makes the other realms look like a pleasant dream, a legalistic, peer-reviewed system, where your fate is decided by the very best of your own kind. Now travel east across the Sea of Sand to the Egyptian Duat. Here the process is not a trial by jury. It is a divine cosmic audit. The soul is guided by the jackal-headed god Anubis into the Hall of Two Truths, a vast chamber where the air hums with ancient power. Before you sits the great god Osiris, king of the underworld, his green skin symbolizing rebirth, his presence both terrifying and serene. He presides, but he is not alone. Lining the hall are 42 other divine assessors, each one representing a specific sin, a cosmic standard you must have upheld. And here, the soul must perform the negative confession. One by one, you must address these fearsome deities and declare your innocence. I have not committed sin. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not made anyone weep. I have not been deceitful. I have not been arrogant. 42 declarations of a pure life. A single lie and your soul would be forfeit. But words are not enough. The gods require proof. This is the main event. The weighing of the heart. The Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of intelligence, emotion, and conscience. It was the record of your entire life. Anubis gently takes your heart and places it on one side of a great golden scale. On the other side, he places a single, pure white ostrich feather. This is the feather of Ma'at, the physical embodiment of truth, justice, balance, and cosmic order. The entire hall falls silent. The scales begin to move. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, stands ready with his scribe's palette, prepared to record the final verdict. If your heart is light, unburdened by sin and deceit, it will be perfectly balanced with the feather. Thoth records your success, and Osiris welcomes you into the field of reeds, an eternal, perfected version of Egypt, a paradise of endless harvests and blissful existence. But if your heart is heavy, if it is weighed down by a lifetime of evil, cruelty, and lies, it will sink, outweighing the feather of truth. The verdict is guilty, and the sentence is not damnation. It is annihilation. For lurking beside the scales is a creature of nightmare, Ammit, the devourer of the dead, a hybrid monster with the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus, the three largest man-killing animals known to the ancient Egyptians. As the scale thuds down, Ammit lunges forward and devours your heart, and with it your soul. You are not tortured. You are erased from existence. Your chance at an afterlife is over forever. The ultimate penalty for a life lived against Ma'at. Now journey north to the biting winds and frozen fog of the Norse lands. Here the concept of a moral judgment is different. For the vast majority of souls, your final destination is not determined by whether you were a good person. It's determined by how you died. If you were a warrior, a shield maiden, a Viking who fell in the glorious heat of battle with a weapon in your hand, your soul is met on the battlefield by the Valkyries, Odin's choosers of the slain. Half of these glorious dead are taken to Folkvanger, the field of the goddess Freya. The other half, the most renowned, are escorted to Odin's great hall Valhalla to feast and fight until the final day of Ragnarok. Their death was their judgment. Their valor was their virtue. But what about everyone else? The farmers, the merchants, the children, the elderly? What about those who died not in a blaze of glory, but from sickness, accident, or old age? A straw death, as they called it. For all of them, the road leads to the same place. Helheim, the realm of the goddess Hel. There is no grand trial here. No weighing of the heart, no tribunal of kings. The simple fact of your unglorious death is your ticket. Hel, the daughter of Loki, half-beautiful woman, half-rotting corpse, presides over a realm that is not one of fire, but of cold, damp, and gloom. It is a shadow world, a misty and boring reflection of life. It's not an explicit punishment for sin, it's simply the default, the great anticlimax at the end of a normal life. Your existence is one of listless, dreary repetition, a hollow echo of your former self. However, even in this grim, fatalistic system, there was a special place for the truly vile. Deep within Hel's domain lies a place called Nastrand, the corpse shore. This is the Norse version of true damnation. It is a hall whose walls are woven from the spines of living serpents, their heads turned inward, dripping burning venom into a river that runs through the hall. And in this river of poison wade the souls of the worst of humanity, murderers, adulterers, and most despised of all in Norse culture, oath-breakers. Here morality does matter. For these souls there is no quiet gloom, only an eternity of searing, venomous torment, chewed on by the great dragon Aer. 3 systems, 3 vastly different philosophies of justice. A trial by your peers where human reason makes the final call. A divine audit where your heart is weighed against cosmic truth itself. And a system of fate where the manner of your death sorts you, reserving true punishment only for those who tore the fabric of society. The judgment is passed. The gates swing open. But what lies beyond them? What are these afterlives actually like? The paradise, the purgatory, the punishment. They are far stranger and more terrifying than you can imagine. Elysium isn't just a sunny field. The field of reeds isn't just endless farmland. And the true horror of Helheim isn't the cold. It's the silence. Let's start with that silence. Imagine walking for an eternity down a dark, wet, sloping road. The air grows colder with every step, clinging to you, seeping into your bones. This is the road to Helheim. And the first thing you notice isn't the cold or the dark or the despair. It's the sound, or rather, the complete and total lack of it. There are no birds, no wind rustling through leaves, no distant cries. Sound itself seems to die here. Every footstep is swallowed by a crushing, oppressive quiet that presses in on your ears, making your own heartbeat sound like a war drum. This is the true horror of Hel's domain. It's not a realm of punishment. It's a realm of utter negation, of absence. The glorious Viking warrior who died of sickness in his bed, the farmer who starved in a harsh winter, the child taken by fever, they all end up here. Their stories, their passions, their rage. It all evaporates in the silent cold. They become shades, listless and gray, huddled together not for warmth, but because it's the only thing to do. There is no glory here. No feasting, no fighting, no Valhalla. Just an endless, silent, shivering twilight. Hel doesn't torture you. She doesn't need to. The realm itself is the torment. It's the slow, eternal realization that you are utterly, completely, and irrevocably forgotten. Your epic life has ended in a silent, cosmic whimper. Now, contrast that bleak uniformity with the Greek underworld. If Helheim is a desolate wasteland, Hades' kingdom is a sprawling, meticulously organized metropolis of the dead. It has districts, laws, and a rigid social hierarchy. It's a bureaucracy of damnation and reward. When a soul crosses the river Styx, carried by the grim ferryman Charon, they don't just wander off into the gloom. They face a divine tribunal. 3 judges, demigods themselves, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, sit and weigh your life. Not your heart against a feather, but the sum total of your deeds. And based on their verdict, you are assigned to your proper place for eternity. For the vast, overwhelming majority, that place is the Asphodel Meadows. And this might be the most subtly terrifying version of purgatory ever conceived. It isn't a place of pain. There's no fire, no torture. It's just gray. An endless gray field of asphodel flowers under a gray sky, populated by millions upon millions of gray fluttering shades. Here you forget who you were. your passions, your memories, your personality. They all drain away like sand through your fingers, leaving you a mindless, whispering husk. You spend eternity drifting, recognizing no one, remembering nothing, driven by faint, ghostly echoes of your earthly life. It is the afterlife of mediocrity, the eternal fate of the unremarkable, an eternity of being nothing. But what if you were remarkable? What if you were a hero? A demigod? A mortal so virtuous and brave that you caught the eye of the gods? Then you might be one of the lucky few sent to Elysium, the Elysian fields. This is the Greek paradise, an island of eternal spring, where the sun always shines and a gentle breeze always blows. Here heroes spend their days in leisure, composing poetry, engaging in athletics, and reliving their greatest glories. Sounds perfect, but even paradise in the underworld is tainted by the shadow of death. When the hero Odysseus traveled to the underworld, he met the shade of the mighty Achilles in Elysium. And Achilles, the greatest warrior who ever lived, confessed a chilling truth. He told Odysseus, "I would rather be a slave on earth for a poor man with no land of his own, than be king over all the dead." Even in paradise, they are still just shades. They are echoes. Elysium is a beautiful, sun-drenched cage, a consolation prize for a life that has been lost forever. But there is a third destination, a place below the gray fields and the sunlit islands, a pit so deep it was said that an anvil dropped from the earth would fall for 9 days before reaching its floor. This is Tartarus. This is not for the mediocre or the wicked. Tartarus is the maximum security prison of the cosmos, reserved for those who committed crimes so heinous they offended the gods themselves. This is where Hades's cold, judicial nature becomes an instrument of exquisite, eternal torment. The punishments here are not random. They are masterpieces of divine, ironic cruelty. You have King Sisyphus, who thought he could cheat death. His punishment? To spend eternity rolling a massive boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down the moment he reaches the top. He is forever trapped in a moment of fruitless, exhausting labor, his cleverness turned into his curse. You have Tantalus, who sacrificed his own son to test the gods. He is forced to stand in a pool of water he can never drink, beneath a fruit tree whose branches he can never reach. He is tormented by eternal, agonizing thirst and hunger, a perfect reflection of his own forbidden appetites. And you have Ixion, who dared to lust after Hera, the wife of Zeus. He is bound to a great fiery wheel that spins for all time through the depths of Tartarus, his illicit passion transformed into endless burning agony. This is the justice of Hades. Absolute, inescapable, and terrifyingly personal. Now let's journey from the structured realms of the Greeks to the perilous, shifting landscapes of Egypt. For the ancient Egyptians, the afterlife wasn't a destination you were simply sent to. It was a journey you had to survive. The Duat, the Egyptian underworld, was a real place, a mirror world to the living, filled with gates, rivers, lakes of fire, and terrifying demons. Every night, the sun god Ra sailed his barge through the 12 hours of the night, corresponding to the 12 regions of the Duat, fighting off the forces of chaos to be reborn at dawn. And the soul of a dead Egyptian had to make that same dangerous journey. You weren't judged at the entrance. You were tested constantly. At each of the 12 gates, you were confronted by a terrifying guardian, a god with a serpent's head or a crocodile's body, brandishing a knife. And you had to know their secret name and recite the correct magical spell from your Book of the Dead to pass. One wrong word, one moment of hesitation, and you were devoured. You had to navigate a fiery river, avoid monstrous serpents like the great chaos dragon Apophis, and outwit demons who sought to trap your soul. This was an active, desperate struggle for your own eternal life. And if you survived it all, if you were brave enough and wise enough, you arrived at the final test, the Hall of Two Truths. This is the courtroom of Osiris. Imagine a vast hall, lined with 42 divine judges, each one waiting to hear you confess your innocence of a specific sin. And in the center of the hall, the great scales. On one side, the god Anubis places your heart, the seat of your intelligence and conscience. On the other, he places a single pure white ostrich feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. Then you must recite the negative confession, declaring to the judges all the evil you did not do in life. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not lied. I have not made anyone weep. As you speak, your heart is weighed. If you lived a life of balance and truth, your heart will be as light as the feather. the scales will balance. Osiris will welcome you into his kingdom, the field of reeds. But if your heart is heavy with sin, with lies, greed, and cruelty, it will tip the scales. And at the foot of the scales waits a creature of nightmares, Amit, the devourer of the dead, a beast with the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. If your heart fails the test, Amit lunges forward and devours it. And for the Egyptians, this was the ultimate horror. Not eternal punishment, but eternal oblivion. Your soul, your very existence is unmade. You cease to be. You are erased from the cosmos forever. For those who passed, their paradise was the field of reeds, Aru. And it wasn't a place of idle leisure like Elysium. It was a perfect, idealized version of the Egypt they loved. A land of endless, fertile fields crisscrossed by canals of cool water. Here, you were given a plot of land to farm, but the crops were bountiful and the labor was light. You were reunited with your family who had passed before you. And best of all, you had hundreds of magical servants called Shabdas to do all the hard work for you. It was an eternity of peace, family, and abundance, a perfected reflection of the life they cherished. So we see three profoundly different visions of justice. Hell's cold, indifferent oblivion for all but the chosen few. Hades' rigid, bureaucratic system of reward, mediocrity, and personalized eternal punishment. And Osiris's all-or-nothing trial by fire, a single test that determines either a perfect paradise or total non-existence. One offers oblivion, one offers a tailored eternity of suffering, and one offers a one-way ticket to paradise, or total erasure. But the true power of these gods isn't just in judging the dead, it's in how they command them. Because in these kingdoms, the dead are not at rest. They are a populace, a resource, an army, waiting for a command. The dead are not a monolith. In the kingdom of Hades, the vast, overwhelming majority are the shades, the spirits who lived lives of no particular note, neither great heroes nor monstrous villains. They drink from the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, and all that they were, their loves, their triumphs, their bitterest regrets, is washed away. They become echoes. They are whispers in a vast, silent meadow of asphodel flowers. They are a kingdom of amnesiacs. Hades' command over them isn't a call to arms. It is the simple, crushing weight of his authority. He doesn't need to inspire them because they have no memory to inspire. He doesn't need to threaten them because they have no fear left to exploit. They are a perfectly managed, perfectly neutral populace. His power is the power of absolute order, a stillness so profound it borders on non-existence. Think of it not as a king ruling over subjects, but as a librarian managing a silent archive of forgotten stories. The shades don't serve him. They simply exist within his domain, contained. His great challenge isn't rebellion, it's escape. His power is in the integrity of his borders, the strength of his locks. He is the ultimate warden, and his command is simple, unspoken, and absolute. You will remain. This is a power of containment, of finality. 100 billion souls stripped of identity, flitting like bats in the gloom, and not one of them will ever challenge his rule, because they can't even remember their own names. Contrast this with the kingdom of Osiris. When a soul, having passed the weighing of the heart, enters the field of reeds, they do not forget. They become more themselves than ever before. The field of reeds, or Aru, is not a gray, silent purgatory. It is a perfect, idealized Egypt. The sun is warmer, the Nile's waters are more life-giving, the crops are eternally bountiful. And the dead are not idle. They are not shades. They are the Akh, the transfigured, effective spirits. And they have a job to do. Osiris's kingdom is a functioning society, a divine bureaucracy, a cosmic engine. The dead are his citizens, and they have purpose. They plow the fields, they reap the harvests, they sail the celestial Nile, all to sustain not just themselves, but the gods and the cosmic order Ma'at. Their labor in the afterlife directly contributes to the continuation of the universe. They are the workforce that keeps reality itself from collapsing into chaos. So Osiris's command is not one of containment, but of contribution. He is not a warden. He is a true king, a pharaoh of a nation more vast and eternal than any earthly empire. His power comes from the willing, purposeful service of millions of blessed souls. They are not an army waiting for war, but a civilization dedicated to eternal life and construction. His command is a call to action. Work, build, prosper, uphold the order of all things. While Hades rules over a kingdom of forgetting, Osiris rules over a kingdom of eternal purpose. His power is active, creative, and essential to the functioning of the entire Egyptian cosmos. And then, there is Hell. Her kingdom, Helheim, is different from both. It is not a place of forgetting, nor is it a place of purposeful labor. It is a place of waiting. The souls who come to her are the straw dead, those who died of sickness, of old age, of anything other than glorious battle. They were not brave enough for Valhalla, but not wicked enough for punishment. They are simply the rest. And in the cold, damp halls of her realm, they do not forget who they were. They remember their lives, their families, the warmth of the sun they can no longer feel. And they wait. Hell's command over them is born of this grim reality. She is their queen, the solemn, half-rotted ruler of a joyless kingdom. But her subjects are not a passive archive like Hades' shades, nor are they a productive society like Osiris's citizens. They are an asset. They are a weapon being held in reserve. Because every soul in Helheim is a future soldier in the army of chaos that will be unleashed at Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. This is the terrible secret of her power. Every nail, from every one of her countless dead, is being harvested to build the mythological ship, Naglfar, a ship made entirely of the fingernails and toenails of the dead. And when Ragnarok begins, this horrifying vessel will be completed. It will be launched on the floodwaters, and sailing upon it will be the entire population of Helheim, an army of the dishonored dead, with Loki at the helm, ready to storm the fields of Asgard and tear down the world of the gods. So Hell's power is not in containment for the sake of order, like Hades. It is containment for the sake of a future cataclysmic war. She is the keeper of a doomsday weapon. Her command is the most terrifying of all. Wait for my signal. While Hades rules the past and Osiris rules an eternal present, Hell rules the future. A future of absolute destruction. Her authority is the promise of a final terrible release. Her power is potential energy, a coiled spring of cosmic resentment, an army of billions dwelling in misery, just waiting for the command to turn that misery outward and burn the universe to the ground. So we see three fundamentally different models of power over the dead. Hades, the warden, whose power is absolute control over a passive, silent majority. His is the power of the cage, the ultimate prison from which there is no parole. His strength is in preventing chaos. Then there is Osiris, the king, whose power is derived from the active, meaningful participation of his citizens in a divine society. His is the power of the perfect nation-state, whose subjects work for the common good. His strength is in creating and maintaining order. And finally, Hel, the general, whose power is the grim stewardship of a vast, waiting army. Her authority is not about maintaining the present, but about holding the key to a terrifying future. Her strength lies in the potential for unleashing ultimate chaos. Which is the greater power? The absolute, unbreakable stasis of Hades' realm? A perfect system of soul containment? The productive, purposeful, and eternal civilization of Osiris? A kingdom that actively powers the cosmos? Or the terrifying, world-ending potential of Hell's legions? An army whose sheer numbers could overwhelm the gods themselves? The warden, the king, or the keeper of the apocalypse? But a ruler is nothing without their enforcers. A kingdom, no matter how orderly or how vast, must be guarded. A king needs his guards, a warden needs his hounds, and a general needs her sentinels to watch the gates. Because these underworlds are not empty fields. They are fortresses. And the guardians of these gates, the monstrous lieutenants who enforce the will of their masters, are legends in their own right, beasts of nightmare and divine judgment who ensure that the dead stay dead, and the living stay far, far away. Let's begin with the most infamous bouncer in all of mythology, the beast who has haunted the nightmares of mortals for millennia. Hades' chief enforcer, Cerberus. This is not some mere guard dog. Cerberus is a chthonic horror of impeccable lineage. His father was Typhon, the hundred-headed monster who almost defeated Zeus himself. His mother was Echidna, the half-woman, half-serpent mother of all monsters. His siblings include the Lernaean Hydra and the Chimera. Terror runs in his blood. Ancient accounts of Cerberus are chillingly consistent in their core details, but wildly varied in their specifics, as if each mortal who glimpsed him went mad in a slightly different way. The most common description gives him 3 heads, each one a snarling mastiff with eyes of burning coal and teeth like sharpened obsidian. But that's just the start. His tail was not a tail at all. but a living, hissing serpent with a venomous bite of its own. And writhing from his back, a mane of countless vipers, each one ready to strike. The sound of his bark was said to crack the very stones of the underworld, a cacophony of rage that could shatter the will of any soul. His job was deceptively simple, a perfect reflection of Hades's rigid sense of order. He was to be a welcoming party of one, fawning and friendly to the newly arrived shades, wagging his serpent tail as they passed through the gates. But his friendliness was a facade for his true purpose. Should any soul dare to turn back, to try and escape their fate and return to the light, all three heads would turn on them in a symphony of primal fury, tearing them limb from limb. He was the ultimate one-way valve, ensuring the population of the dead only ever increased. So absolute was his power that only a handful in all of Greek myth ever managed to get past him. The hero Orpheus, desperate to retrieve his lost love, didn't fight him. He was a musician, not a warrior. Instead, he played his lyre, and a melody so beautiful, so filled with sorrow and love, flowed into the underworld. The Furies wept. Sisyphus stopped pushing his boulder, and Cerberus, the unstoppable monster, lay down, all three of his heads whimpering softly as the music tamed his savage heart, and he fell asleep. But the most famous encounter belongs to Heracles. For his final impossible labor, he was tasked with bringing Cerberus to the land of the living. He descended into the dark, and without using any weapons, as per Hades's own command, he wrestled the beast. He wrapped his immense arms around the dogs' necks, squeezing until the monster, gasping for air and choked by the hero's divine strength, finally submitted. Heracles dragged the beast into the sunlight, a feat so terrifying that the king who commanded it hid in a jar. Heracles, his task complete, dutifully returned the hound to his post. Cerberus is the quintessential guardian, a single overwhelming point of failure, a physical test of might or a magical test of artistry. You either beat him or you don't. Now, contrast this singular brute force approach with the nightmare of Egyptian bureaucracy. Osiris's realm, the Duat, wasn't protected by a single monster at a single gate. Oh no, that would be far too simple. The journey through the Duat was a perilous trek through 12 distinct regions, corresponding to the 12 hours of the night. And each region was sealed by a massive gate, a pylon protected by its own legion of demonic guardians. These weren't just mindless beasts. They were cosmic horrors with names that dripped with dread. At the seventh gate, the soul would face a god named He Whose Face is Inverted, flanked by a doorkeeper called He Who Lives on Snakes. At the 10th gate, you'd meet the one who is loud of voice, a being who could stun you with a shriek. The guardians were a grotesque menagerie of knife-wielding serpents, crocodile-headed demons, and twisted figures of human and animal parts, each one brandishing a weapon and a threat. There was Blood Drinker, who comes from the slaughterhouse, and the one who eats the excrement of his hindquarters. These weren't just guards. They were personifications of every terror, every defilement, every possible way reality could go wrong. And you couldn't fight them. Heracles' strength would be useless here. Orpheus's lyre would be met with deafening silence. The only way past these guardians was knowledge. The soul, guided by the Book of the Dead, had to approach each gate and address each guardian by its true secret name. It was a password system from hell. You had to prove you understood the cosmic order, that you were worthy of passing. Oh, you gate, I know you, and I know your name, and I know the name of the god who guards you. Get a single name wrong and you were devoured, annihilated, ceasing to exist entirely. This complex, terrifying system is a perfect reflection of Osiris's domain. He is not a king of brute force like Hades. He is a king of law, order, and judgment. His underworld is a trial. The guardians are not bouncers. They are customs and immigration officers for the soul. They check your papers, test your knowledge, and ensure that only the worthy, the mot, the righteous and true, can proceed to the final hall of judgment. Where Cerberus represents a physical barrier, the guardians of the Duat represent a spiritual and intellectual one. And then there is the chilling simplicity of the Norse. Hell's realm, Helheim, is guarded by its own monstrous hound, a beast named Garmr. Chained in the darkness of the cave Nipaheller, Garmr is often compared to Cerberus, but he is a far more sinister figure. While Cerberus is a static guard, Garmr is a harbinger of doom. He is a piece of the apocalypse waiting to be unleashed. The prophecies say that when Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, begins, Garmr will break his chains. His howling, which an old poem says is the worst of all evils for men, will echo through the 9 worlds. He will run free and fight the god of war, Tyr, and the two will kill each other in the final battle. Garmr is not just a guard dog. He is a living countdown to the end of everything, his bloody chest a constant reminder of the violence that awaits. But he is not the only guardian. To enter Helheim proper, a soul must cross the Joel Bridge, which spans the river Joel, a river flowing with ringing, clattering weapons. And on that bridge stands a solitary figure, the giantess Modgud. She is not a mindless beast. She is an ancient, sentient warden. When the god Hermod rode to Helheim to try and bargain for the life of Baldur, he came to this bridge. Modgud stopped him. She looked at him, a living being in the land of the dead, and she did not attack. She questioned him. "What is your name and your kin?" she asked, her voice the sound of grinding ice. "Yesterday, 5 troops of dead men rode over the bridge, but it does not clang so loud under you alone. And you do not have the color of the dead. Why do you ride the road to hell?" This is a different kind of terror. It's not the physical threat of Cerberus or the bureaucratic nightmare of the Duat. It is a cold, personal and psychological confrontation. Modgud is the unblinking border guard who demands to know your purpose. She is the final checkpoint where you must account for yourself. You cannot trick her, you cannot fight her. You can only answer. She is the embodiment of hell's grim, observant nature. A gatekeeper who sees you for what you are, living or dead, and forces you to confront the finality of the path you are on. So we have 3 distinct philosophies of containment. The Greeks have a single monstrous choke point, a challenge of pure power or pure art. The Egyptians have a sprawling multi-layered gauntlet, a test of ritual purity and sacred knowledge. And the Norse have a grim, apocalyptic beast and a watchful, interrogating giantess, a primal and personal barrier. These guardians, in all their terrible glory, are the first and last line of defense for their master's realms. They are the terrifying welcome committee to the afterlife. But they only guard the door. The real question is, what happens once you get inside? What horrors, what wonders, what eternal landscapes of punishment or peace lie waiting beyond the fangs of the beast and the gaze of the judge? Let's start with the Greeks. Forget the fire and brimstone you see in movies. That's a modern invention. The true realm of Hades is for most something far more chilling. An eternity of gray, silent, soul-crushing boredom. It is a vast, cavernous, and sunless kingdom, defined not by fire but by water. 5 great rivers carve through its landscape, each a liquid boundary of cosmic law. First is the Styx, the river of unbreakable oaths. Its black waters are so sacred that even the gods swear by it, and any who break such a vow are cast into a coma for a year and exiled from Olympus for 9 more. This is the river you've heard of, but it's not the one you cross. That honor belongs to the Acheron, the river of sorrow and pain, where the grim ferryman Charon pulls his skiff, demanding payment to carry the dead to their final home. Then there is the Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, a silent, milky water that, if drunk, erases every memory of your mortal life, leaving you a blank, witless shade. There is the Cocytus, the river of wailing, formed from the tears of the damned. And finally, the Phlegethon, a hissing, roaring river of pure fire that coils around the deepest pit of the underworld, but provides the only source of light in the eternal gloom. Once you've crossed these rivers, once you've passed Cerberus, your soul arrives at the great fork in the road, where the judges of the dead decree your fate. For the vast, overwhelming majority of humanity, the average, the unremarkable, those who were neither great heroes nor great sinners, the path leads to the Asphodel Meadows. This is not a punishment. It is a void. Imagine a misty twilight field stretching to an infinite horizon, covered in gray, ghostly asphodels. Here, the shades of the dead wander aimlessly, twittering like bats with no memory, no personality, no purpose. They are echoes going through the motions of a life they can't remember. It was here that the hero Odysseus met the shade of the mighty Achilles, who told him, "I would rather be a slave on earth for another man than rule over all the dead." It is an eternity of nothing. But if you were a great hero, a righteous king, or a soul deeply beloved by the gods, you would be sent to Elysium, the Elysian fields. This was the paradise, a place of eternal springtime where a soft golden light, separate from the sun, illuminated lush meadows. There was no work, no sorrow, no pain. Just endless days of music, poetry, sport, and conversation with the greatest souls who ever lived. It was the ultimate retirement package for the ancient world's 1%. And then there was the third path, a path that led downward, down into a pit of darkness so deep it was said to be as far beneath Hades as the earth is beneath the heavens. This was Tartarus. This was not a realm for common murderers or thieves. Their punishments were meted out in the general fields of Hades. Tartarus was a cosmic prison, a divine torture chamber reserved for those who committed crimes against the gods themselves. It was here the Titans were chained in eternal blackness after their war with the Olympians. It was here King Sisyphus was doomed to forever roll a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down the moment he reached the top. Here King Tantalus stood in a pool of cool water beneath a fruit-laden tree, yet whenever he bent to drink, the water would recede, and whenever he reached for fruit, the branches would pull away, leaving him in a state of eternal, agonizing thirst and hunger. Tartarus was a place of specific, personalized, and unending torment, a monument to the price of defying the divine. Now travel east across the sea to the black soil of Egypt. Their underworld, the Duat, was not a static place of eternal sorting, but a dynamic, terrifying, and ultimately hopeful journey. For the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition, a dangerous obstacle course the soul had to navigate to reach paradise. The Duat was a realm that mirrored the world of the living, but was filled with gods, demons, and supernatural perils. It was divided into 12 sections, representing the 12 hours of the night. Every single night, the great sun god Ra would sail his solar barge into the Duat, bringing light to the dead. The ultimate goal of a deceased soul was to navigate the Duat's dangers and join Ra on his boat, to be reborn with him at dawn. But the path was not easy. Each of the 12 hours was a distinct region with its own gate, guarded by terrifying deities with names like He Who Lives on Snakes or Blood Drinker from the Slaughterhouse. To pass, the soul had to know the guardian's secret name and recite the correct magic spells from their Book of the Dead. They would face lakes of fire, navigate caverns filled with serpents, and most terrifying of all, witness Ra's nightly battle against his eternal enemy, the great chaos serpent Apep, who tried to swallow the sun and plunge the universe into eternal darkness. If the soul was successful, if their heart was judged to be pure and they knew the secret words, they would pass through the final gate and arrive at Aru, the field of reeds. And where the Greek Elysium was a place of leisurely bliss, Aru was an idealized, perfect version of the life the soul had left behind. It was a lush, fertile land, eternally irrigated by the celestial waters of the Nile. Here, the soul would be granted a plot of land to farm, but without the sweat and toil of earthly life. The wheat grew 12 feet tall, the beer was sweeter, the food was endless. You were reunited with your family, your friends, even your beloved pets. It was not an escape from life, but a perfected continuation of it. An eternal sun-drenched existence where all of life's joys were preserved, and all of its sorrows were washed away. It was a paradise born not of heroic deeds, but of a good and balanced life. Finally, we journey north, to the biting cold and choking mist of the Norse lands. Here, the underworld is Helheim, a realm ruled by the half-living, half-dead daughter of Loki. And unlike the other two, getting here wasn't primarily about morality. It was about your death. If you died a glorious death in battle, your soul was carried by the Valkyries to Valhalla, Odin's great hall, to feast and fight until the end of the world. But for everyone else, those who died of sickness, of old age, of accident, or even in childbirth, there was only one road. The road to Helheim. It is a place of primordial cold, located in the dark, icy world of Niflheim. To get there, a soul must travel the long road called Helvegr, down into the north, for 9 days and 9 nights through deepening gloom. They must cross the roaring river Joel, which flows with weapons instead of water, over a bridge paved with glittering gold, guarded by a giantess who demands to know your name and business. Helheim itself is a stark, grim, and miserable place. It is not a realm of fire and torture, but of bone-chilling damp, fog, and silence. Hel's great hall is named Lulchner, which means sleek cold. The details of her domain read like a poem of despair. Her plate is hunger, her knife is famine, her bed is sickbed, and her curtains are gleaming bale. It is an existence of shivering mediocrity and gloom. For a culture that prized glory, honor, and a vibrant life, this fate of becoming a listless, cold shade was perhaps more terrifying than any act of punishment. But make no mistake, there was a special place for the truly wicked. On the northernmost shore of Helheim lay Nastrand, the corpse shore. This was a hall woven from the spines of serpents, their heads turned inward, dripping venom that formed rivers on the floor. Here, murderers, adulterers, and oathbreakers were forced to wade through the caustic poison while the great dragon, Injar, feasted on their corpses. So we see three profoundly different visions of what awaits us. A Greek system of moral sorting, where you are assigned to an eternity of boredom, bliss, or ingenious torture. An Egyptian trial by fire, a perilous journey where knowledge and virtue could win you a perfected version of the life you lost. And a Norse realm of cold, dishonorable gloom, a bleak consequence of failing to die a glorious death. These realms are vast, they are terrifying, and they are beautiful. They are the kingdoms these gods command. But a kingdom is nothing without its king, or queen. How did Hades, Osiris, and Hell actually rule these domains? What was their relationship to the dead? And what power did they hold over the living? Let's start with Hades, the unseen one. His style of rule was less about active governance and more about absolute, unyielding administration. He was the ultimate bureaucrat of the afterlife. The souls in his realm were not his adoring subjects. They were his inventory. He was a warden, a keeper of a cosmic prison from which there was no escape. His primary concern was order. The fundamental law of the universe was that the dead stay dead, and Hades was its chief enforcer. He was not evil, he was simply final. The Greeks saw him as stern, inflexible, and terrifyingly just. When you arrived in his kingdom, your station in life, your wealth, your power, it all evaporated. You became a shade, a whisper of your former self, and you answered to him. His relationship with the dead was one of complete detachment. He didn't torture them, he didn't torment them. That was the job of the Furies, who answered to the cosmic laws of justice, not necessarily to Hades himself. For the vast majority of souls, existence in the Asphodel Meadows was a gray, tedious, and melancholic affair. Hades didn't care if they were happy or sad. He only cared that they were there. His power was demonstrated not by interaction, but by its absence. He was so powerful he didn't need to prove it. The few times mortals challenged his authority, like Sisyphus who cheated death twice, or Pirithous who tried to abduct his wife, his response was swift and eternal. The famous punishments of Tartarus were reserved for these exceptional cases, for those who committed hubris on a divine scale. For everyone else, Hades was simply the silent, ever-present king of their new permanent home. And his power over the living, it was immense but indirect. People rarely built temples to Hades or prayed to him for favor. Why would you? To pray to Hades was to invite death. Instead, they prayed against him, hoping to delay their inevitable meeting. His power was the power of fear and finality. Oaths sworn by the river Styx, the boundary of his domain, were the most sacred and unbreakable in the Greek world, because to break one was to invite the wrath of the one god from whom you could never hide. But Hades held another, more tangible power. His name Pluton literally means the wealthy one. All the precious metals and gems buried in the earth were his. He was the god of the planet's hidden riches. So while the living feared his grasp on their souls, they coveted his grasp on the world's wealth. He was the ultimate paradox, the source of their greatest fear and the keeper of their deepest desires. Now, contrast this with Osiris in Egypt. If Hades was a warden, Osiris was a beloved king. If Hades's kingdom was a prison, Osiris's was a paradise earned. His entire method of rule was built on a personal relationship with the dead. He wasn't a distant administrator. He was the ultimate judge, the one every Egyptian soul had to face. His authority came not from unyielding law, but from moral righteousness. Having been betrayed, murdered, and resurrected, he embodied the hope of eternal life. He had conquered death, and he offered the righteous the chance to do the same. His relationship with the dead was therefore deeply interactive and aspirational. To enter his kingdom, the field of reeds, a soul had to undergo the weighing of the heart. Their heart, the seat of their conscience, was placed on a scale opposite the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. The soul then had to recite the negative confession, declaring all the bad things they had not done in life. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not been deceitful. If the heart was lighter than the feather, if their life was pure, Osiris welcomed them into an eternal paradise, a perfect reflection of the Nile Valley. But if the heart was heavy with sin, it was devoured by the monster Ammit, and the soul was cast into oblivion, a second, final death. Osiris didn't just rule the dead. He gave their lives meaning. and their death's purpose. He was the divine gatekeeper to a blissful eternity. This gave Osiris almost unparalleled power over the living. The entire Egyptian civilization for thousands of years was structured around preparing for this single moment of judgment. The elaborate tombs, the mummification process, the Book of the Dead filled with spells and guidance. It was all a national effort to ensure a favorable outcome with Osiris. Pharaohs were seen as the incarnation of his son, Horus, in life, and they became Osiris in death. His story was tied directly to the lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile. His death represented the dry season, and his resurrection by Isis mirrored the annual flood that brought fertility back to the land. He wasn't just king of the dead. He was the very engine of life, death, and rebirth. The living didn't fear him. They revered him. They worked their entire lives to be worthy of standing before him. And then there is Hel, the enigmatic queen of the Norse underworld. Her rule is a fascinating middle ground between the cold administration of Hades and the moral judgment of Osiris. She was not a warden of a prison, nor the keeper of a paradise. She was a hostess in a grim, cheerless hall. Odin cast her down into the darkness and gave her authority over the 9 worlds of Niflheim, decreeing that all who died of sickness or old age, the inglorious straw death, would go to her. Her rule was a matter of divine decree, a cosmic assignment. Her kingdom, Helheim, was not a place of punishment. It was simply the alternative to the glorious warrior's afterlife in Valhalla. Her relationship with her subjects, the Nair or corpses, was as stark and cold as her realm. She fed them, she housed them, but there was no joy, no hope, no despair. It was an existence of hollow continuation. Her very appearance, half beautiful woman, half decaying corpse, perfectly mirrored her domain and her subjects, who were caught between being and nothingness. She ruled with a quiet, implacable authority. Her word was absolute, not because of fear or reverence, but because it was the established order. She was a queen born to a grim throne, and she performed her duties with a chilling lack of emotion. But what about her power over the living? This is where Hel becomes truly terrifying. For most, she was a distant, grim reality, but the gods themselves knew her power. The most famous story is of the death of Balder, the most beloved of the gods. When he was killed, the entire pantheon mourned, and a god named Hermod rode the 8-legged steed Sleipnir for 9 nights to the very gates of Helheim. He found Balder seated in a place of honor and begged Queen Hel for his release. And Hel, ruler of her domain, demonstrated a power that even Odin had to respect. She didn't just refuse. She made a deal. She would release Balder, she said, if every single thing in all the 9 realms, living and dead, would weep for him. This shows her power wasn't just passive. She could bargain with the fate of a god. Her authority was so absolute that the Aesir couldn't storm her gates or command her. They had to ask. And when the plan failed because of one giantess who refused to weep, her decree stood. Balder remained. More than that, Hel held a trump card for the end of the world. At Ragnarok, when the final battle commences, it is Hel who will unleash her army of the dead. She will sail from the north in the ship Naglfar, made from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, leading her pale, dishonored legions against the gods of Asgard. Her power over the living then was not in their daily worship, but in the existential threat she represented. She held the key to a vast, silent army that would one day rise to help tear the world apart. So we have 3 rulers, 3 distinct styles of power. Hades, the unseen banker of souls and wealth, whose power is in his inevitability. Osiris, the righteous judge and god of rebirth, whose power is in the hope of paradise. And Hel, the grim queen of the inglorious dead, whose power is in her absolute authority and the apocalyptic threat she commands. Each ruled their domain completely, but the nature of that rule shaped the hopes, fears, and very civilizations of the living world above. They weren't just keepers of the dead. They were mirrors reflecting what their cultures valued most: order, justice, or a glorious end. But this brings us to the final, crucial question. When we strip everything else away, who was truly the most powerful? Not just as a ruler, but as a cosmic force, whose influence truly echoes the loudest even today. To answer this, we have to define what power truly means. Is it raw, destructive force? Is it the ability to command legions and bend reality to your will? If that's the measure, then the answer points to Hades. He is one of the big 3, a son of Kronos, a brother of Zeus and Poseidon. He didn't just inherit a kingdom. He won it in a cosmic lottery after a universe-shattering war against the Titans. His power is primordial. He commands the Furies, the very embodiment of vengeance. He holds the keys to Tartarus, the deepest pit of damnation where gods and monsters are imprisoned. In a direct head-to-head confrontation, it's difficult to imagine Osiris, who was dismembered by his brother, or Hel, who was given her realm by Odin, standing against the sheer might of an Olympian who helped overthrow the old order. Hades's power is the power of a king, an enforcer, a warden of cosmic-level threats. He is a pillar holding up the very structure of the Greek cosmos. But is that the only kind of power that matters? What about the power of influence? The power to shape not just the afterlife but life itself? If we measure power by the hearts and minds of the living, then Hades becomes a shadow, and Osiris stands in the full light of the sun. No one in ancient Greece built temples to Hades out of love. They whispered his name in fear, hoping to avoid his gaze. He was a necessary, respected, but ultimately dreaded force. Osiris, on the other hand, was the heart of Egypt. He was the Nile, the fertile soil, the promise of grain after the flood. His death and resurrection weren't just a myth. They were the central drama of their entire civilization, acted out in yearly festivals. He was worshipped not as a king of the dead, but as a god of life, hope, and rebirth. His influence extended from the pharaoh on his throne to the farmer in the field. Every single Egyptian who hoped for a paradise in the field of reeds was placing their eternal fate in the hands of Osiris. His power wasn't in his fists. It was in the fundamental belief that death was not an end, but a transition to a just and beautiful world he had prepared. That is a power far more pervasive, far more intimate than anything Hades ever wielded. So where does this leave Hel? She seems the weakest of the three. Her realm is smaller, her origins less grand. She wasn't a warrior king or a symbol of national hope, but to underestimate her is to miss the terrifying nature of her power. Hel's power is the power of inevitability. It is quiet, grim, and absolute. She doesn't need to fight. She doesn't need to be worshipped. She simply needs to wait, because for the vast majority of Norse people, those who didn't die a glorious death in battle, the road led to her door. Her power isn't about grand cosmic battles. It's the simple, unchangeable fact of entropy, of decay, of the body growing cold. Odin, the All-Father, could not rescue his own beloved son Balder from her grasp. The rules of her realm were so absolute that even the king of Asgard was rendered helpless. There is a terrifying strength in that. A power that doesn't need to be demonstrated because it is a fundamental law of existence. While Hades rules a complex society of shades and Osiris presides over a paradise, Hel simply is. She is the end of the story for most people. A cold, stark, and inescapable reality. So we have three kinds of power. The raw, sovereign power of Hades, the king. The profound, cultural power of Osiris, the savior. And the absolute, inexorable power of Hel, the inevitable end. Trying to declare one the most powerful is like asking whether the storm, the sun, or the stone is strongest. They are powerful in different ways on different terms. But perhaps there's one final lens through which we can view them. Their legacy. Whose story has had the most profound impact on us right now? Hades has become a fixture of pop culture, a misunderstood villain in countless movies and games. He is the archetype of the Dark Lord of the Underworld. He is known, but he is a caricature. Osiris is less of a household name, but his ideas are woven into the very fabric of Western civilization. The concept of a final judgment, of weighing a person's deeds on a scale, the promise of resurrection and an eternal paradise for the worthy. These ideas didn't just vanish with the Egyptian empire. They echoed through mystery cults and new philosophies, and you can hear their whispers in the foundations of the world's largest religions. His influence is subtle but immense. And then there is Hel, the quiet goddess of the inglorious dead. Her legacy is perhaps the most shocking of all. Her name, twisted and transformed through language and changing beliefs, became the name for the ultimate destination of sinners in the world's most dominant religion. Hel became hell. The grim, neutral twilight realm became a pit of eternal fire and damnation, a concept utterly alien to the Norse people who first imagined her. In a strange, ironic twist of fate, the quiet goddess of the common folk had her name attached to the most terrifying concept in the Western spiritual imagination. Is there any greater measure of influence than shaping the very language we use to speak of damnation? So who is the most powerful? If you seek a king who can command the abyss and imprison titans, you must bow to Hades. If you seek a god who can offer hope, inspire a civilization, and promise a paradise beyond the grasp of death, you must follow Osiris. And if you seek the one whose very name has become synonymous with eternal suffering, shaping the fears of billions for centuries, then you must acknowledge the long, cold shadow of hell. The truth is, these gods are more than just characters in a celestial cage match. They are mirrors. They reflect the societies that dreamed them up, and in turn, reflect our own deepest anxieties and hopes about the one journey we all must eventually take. The Greeks, with their focus on order and structure, envisioned a vast, organized, and inescapable kingdom under a powerful ruler. The Egyptians, whose lives were defined by the cyclical life-giving nature of the Nile, envisioned a cyclical journey of death and rebirth, overseen by a benevolent god of life. The Norse, a people living in a harsh, unforgiving climate, who valued a warrior's death above all else, saw the alternative as a bleak, cold, but not necessarily evil continuation of existence. In the end, the question isn't, who was the most powerful? The real question is, what does our choice say about us? Do we fear chaos and value order above all, like the subjects of Hades? Do we cling to the hope of justice and a beautiful reward, like the followers of Osiris? Or do we accept the grim, unglamorous reality of the end, like those who walk the road to hell? These ancient deities are not just gods of the underworld. They are gods of human nature. They are the personification of our fear of being forgotten, our hope for justice, and our quiet acceptance of the inevitable. Their kingdoms may be myths, their thrones may be dust, but the questions they represent, what is justice, what is honor, and what awaits us when our story ends, are as real and as powerful today as they were thousands of years ago, and they will continue to haunt and inspire us long after the names of gods are forgotten.